Hello and welcome to Pattern of the Ages, a podcast about the Amazon Prime show, The Wheel of Time. My name is Tony, and joining me is Ryan.
Hey, I'm excited to talk about episode 4 today.
Today, we will be discussing and recapping episode 4 of The Wheel of Time, titled The Dragon Reborn. Please note there will be spoilers for episodes 1 through 4, so if you haven't watched yet, you may want to pause this and come back later. However, we will be avoiding spoilers for all future episodes. We will begin the show with a recap of the episode, and afterwards, we will discuss our overall impressions. But before we jump into the recap, Ryan, did you see where Amazon has announced that the Wheel of Time had its largest debut ever for the streaming service?
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I'm not sure if they gave numbers or anything, but it's exciting that a lot of people are watching the show.
Yeah, absolutely. You always hate to see a show that you love get canceled. And I
Yeah,
guess the best way to ensure a show doesn't get canceled is for a lot of people to watch it. So this is definitely good news.
yeah. So we'll see where it
Yeah.
goes. Yeah.
And I would assume that a lot of other people will pick up the show as it goes on or as it's fully
Yeah,
released. A lot of people, a lot of people like to wait until whole season is released and then binge it all at once. So
yeah,
yeah, all good news for the show. Should we start with the recap?
yeah. So, like you said, episode 4 is titled "The Dragon Reborn," and this episode was directed by Wayne Yip, who directed episode 3. And like we said last episode, he's also going to be directing some of the Lord of the Rings episodes that will release on Amazon next year. And it is written by Dave Hill. So, just to start the episode, the first thing that we see is the character from the previous episode who was in the cage. We're sort of flashing back to him, and he's fighting an army. And the text on the screen says that the city is called Gildan. And basically, he's using his powers, his magic to attack this city. And he um, is confronting a man who I think was basically the king of the city. And while he's using his magic, these things around him are talking to him and saying to basically um, kill him and become more powerful. But the character, and it's revealed that his name is Logain. He heals this man with his powers and basically says, "You can join me. There's a place for everyone in my army," kind of thing.
Right. So he and his army, Logain and his army are taking the city
Hmm.
of Gelden, and they, instead of killing the king and taking power, he decides to instead heal the king and ask the king to join him because he has room for anybody who wants to join,
Yeah,
and he wants to assert himself as not a barbarian, but somebody who is willing to be inclusive of
hmm,
whoever wants to come and join with his group. I did want to point out there's a really nice overhead shot in the scene where all the people are fleeing from Logain's army, and they're fleeing. It's overhead shot, and they're all fleeing, and they go through like a tunnel,
hmm,
and they come out and only one comes out the other end. So it's like dozens of people going into the tunnel, and then one person comes out of the tunnel, and that's the king. And following the king is Logain. So it's a really nice visual where you can see where Logain is just kind
yeah,
of shredding through all these people. So as if to show us how powerful his magic is, and then to show us that he's a merciful, uh, a merciful uh, person.
yeah,
Uh, he offers to heal the king and take him under his wing, basically.
yeah. And he says he's a dragon reborn in this scene.
Right. Yeah. 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 Very insistent about that throughout the
Yeah,
whole episode. Yeah. Okay. So after that episode, that's the kind of the
hmm,
opening of the show, and then that moves us into a different scene with a different group of characters.
Yeah, so it opens back to Land, Nynaeve, and Moraine, and they are now in the Aes Sedai camp. So presumably they have taken Logain to here, and they're kind of grouping up with the other Aes Sedai. And we're introduced to quite a few new characters in this episode. So the first one is Karini, and we see her healing Moraine's wound finally. So she's now completely healed from the attack in the first episode. And they mentioned that Logain's presence is sort of weakening their power. So the healing kind of takes a lot out of her.
Yeah, they're just tired from constantly having to hold him in place with their magic.
Right. Yeah, so the Aes Sedai are working in pairs, and they're kind of taking shifts on shielding Logain in his cage from using magic. So they're basically keeping watch on him and keeping him at bay.
Right.
So we see Leandrin is there, and we're introduced to another new character, Alana, and they're working together to shield him.
And then it's asked of them how did you catch him to begin with? Because I was wondering that myself.
Yeah.
And they say that they just snuck up on him when he was sleeping.
Yeah.
Which is like delightfully simple. Like, I'm glad they didn't have to invent some big drastic backstory.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, he fell asleep when we snuck up on him.
Another thing I was going to note was that this may be the event or the conflict that Perrin was talking about in episode 1 when he said, like, there's armies gathering.
Oh, good point.
May have been the scene in Gildan. It could be happening at the same time or previously before.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but you're absolutely right. That could be definitely what he was talking about.
Yeah. So then we get Leandrin, and we kind of get her philosophy here, where she wants to punish Logain and basically do what they call gentling to him.
Yeah, that's basically taking his powers away.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And that's kind of a callback to the first episode too, with the very first scene of the show, where Leandrin does a similar thing to the man that they're chasing.
Right, when he's running to the wall, and there's a crack in the wall, and they stop him from going through. Yeah.
And we noted that they didn't kill him, so we can probably presume that they gentled him in that scene.
Yeah, good point.
And then so Leandrin says that, like, she basically wants to end it now, but Karini is saying that they need to take him to what they call the Amerlin seat for a proper trial.
And at this point, we don't know anything about what the Amerlin seat is, though. They just say that kind of matter of factly, like, oh, we need to take him to the Amerlin seat for the trial, and then they just kind of let it hang there without telling us more about what that is.
Yeah. And Moraine joins in on the channeling as well, so they're all taking shifts at this point.
Yeah. So she wants to help. She wants to help out with the group and be useful in that way. So she offers to do it, and then it gives them more time to talk about how powerful he is.
Yeah. So then we stay in the camp, but then we go to Land, and he's training with Karini's warder, his name is Stefan.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of dialogue about the Amerlin seat again, and Stefan says that she is not very fond of Moraine.
Right. So that made me think, first of all, this scene is pure cringe. Like, it's like the only scene in the whole episode where I was like not enjoying. I was enjoying the dialogue, but I was not enjoying like the medium through which they were delivering this dialogue. Like, I didn't enjoy that they were like doing these training, like these kind of slow motion training, almost like a Tai Chi sort of like training exercises. And I thought, why did they have to do this scene in this way? Like, why couldn't they could literally just be sitting around a campfire or chopping wood or walking through they could have been doing a dozen other things besides like doing these Tai Chi kind of battle exercises. I don't know if they thought they were doing some foreshadowing of the battle that comes later in the episode or what, but
I think they just wanted to remind the audience that, like, these people are warriors.
Yeah.
I
I
could
mean,
see
fair
why it's
enough.
kind of weird.
Yeah, fair enough. But it just seemed kind of, and
It's funny that
they have kind of this like passive aggressive thing going on too, where they're kind of like mock, like slow motion going after each other and then
yeah,
laughing about it. And I don't know. It's felt a little goofy to me, but
yeah. It's funny that you mentioned slow mo though, because I think there was at least two or three actual slow mos scenes in this episode where they use
yeah,
effects
yeah,
to slow things down.
yeah. So they're talk. So anyway, my big takeaway from that scene personally was they're talking about the Amerlin seat not being fond of Moraine, and it made the Amerlin seat sound like it's one person.
Mhm.
Like, did you get that vibe too? That they meant it to be
Yeah,
talking about one person in particular rather than like a council?
yeah, and they say that this person is at the tower where they're going, so we can probably
The White
assume that.
Tower.
Yeah, we can assume that this person is basically the governing body
Yeah. Well,
for
the
the
body or
action.
the person? That's my
Yeah,
question.
yeah, the person.
Yeah. I mean, they made it sound like it was a person, but
Yeah,
we won't really know until we see. But yeah. Okay. So in the next scene, we have Stefan and Carini talking about how Leandrin is a red and they have been gentling men across the countryside. And I guess this scene was just to kind of introduce the concept that the Aes Sedai have different
mhm.
like sects that are differentiated by color. So you have reds and you have greens and you have blues. And so this is the kind of first mention of how different
Yeah,
colors have different purposes.
and I think Karini's a little worried about the gentling.
Yeah. Doesn't want it, doesn't want her to do it, or doesn't want her to defy the Amerlin seat.
Yeah, so we get a sense that these different Ajas have different motivations, and
Yeah, for sure. That they're
yeah,
all, yeah, they're all not thinking alike, that they all have strong personalities and they all have ideas about how they want to get things done. Um, but yeah. So then the next scene's at the Tinkerer camp with
mhm.
Perrin.
Yeah. So Perrin is he was not able to sleep, and he's talking to Egwin, and he just says like he doesn't trust these people, and
Still,
yeah,
Perrin really is what do these people have to do to get Perrin on their side? They've been like nothing but nice to him the whole time, but
yeah.
he still thinks they're sketchy.
And I think part of that is like the stigma that they have in the villages that he kind of grew up with. That
Okay,
these
yeah.
people like they kidnap children and they have their own way of life,
Yeah,
kind
that's
of thing.
fair. Yeah.
And yeah, but Egwin says like we can leave whenever you want. Like she doesn't care,
Right.
and they basically tell the Tinkerers tell them that they're heading east to the tower in Tarvalin. So they're going to the same place that the other characters are.
So yeah, so they just decided to stay with him out of convenience more than anything else. I that was my reading of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so there's that. We check in with them, and then the next scene is Rand and Matt with one T are
Hmm.
traveling with Tom with an unnecessary H,
Yeah, the
and
fantasy H.
yeah, yeah, Tom Tom the Bard slash what do they call them?
The Gleeman.
Gleeman, right? Okay, so Rand and Matt are with Tom. Rand doesn't trust Tom, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah,
he basically says, "Why are we traveling with this person like
right.
that stole our money?" And
Right. He could be a dark friend. And then he says something along the lines of during this conversation, he says, well, he did kill the woman back in the village,
yeah,
and
Dana.
help us escape. And then Matt says, or Brand, I can't remember which one of them says, well, maybe he just did that to gain our trust.
Yeah, I think Rand is the one that doesn't really trust him. Matt seems to have
Yeah. And then
because they
Matt,
had their moment with the
right.
ideal.
And then Matt says, well, I guess that's a good point, but nothing really, the conversation doesn't really go anywhere as far as that's
Yeah,
concerned. But then again, uh Matt comes back around to saying that um Dana said there were 5 dragon candidates and they're wondering like who's the fifth.
Yeah, and that's kind of where that scene ends. Like they're wondering
Yeah.
why she said that.
Yeah. And of course the audiences too. So they're just kind of, I guess the purpose of this is just to kind of reintroduce to the audience
Yeah.
that it's still an open question.
Yeah. So then we move back to Moraine, and she's now working with Alana, and they're doing their shift for shielding Logain. And one thing that kind of is concerning or a little bit unusual for Moraine is that the Aes Sedai can't see the men's weaving, so they don't see his one power when he uses it.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Like
Yeah,
that's a fun detail.
yeah, and so they're talking, and it's kind of introduced that they were friends when they were growing up, and they sort of trained together. And they talk about how Moraine had a pet dog, and Moraine says like, "It wasn't my dog; it just stayed with us," kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess it's supposed to illustrate that she's a little bit of a rule breaker.
Yeah, um, and we are introduced to another Aja. So we have the green Aja, and Alana says that she's part of them, and that they are called the Battle Aja, and they're basically training for the last battle that, like the prophecies say, is going to come with the Dark One. And they talk about how the dragon might be a part of this prophecy and with the last battle, and they discuss how Logain may be a false dragon, and they're unsure like of whether he is or not. And Alana basically says they might need him or they might need the dragon for the final battle, and the Reds want to gentle him, which would be a problem.
Right. So explain this scene a little bit more to me. Like I kind of got lost. Like this
Mhm.
was the one scene in the show, the episode that kind of lost me a little bit. Like, why does she think that they need the dragon for the last battle? Like, isn't the last battle just supposed to be against the dragon? So why would it matter?
I think the last battle, like in the prophecy, is supposed to be like the dark and the light are facing each other.
Okay.
So, and it's never really clear whether the dragon is dark or light,
Oh,
because they
so
say he
she's
could break
saying
the
that
war.
maybe, so
Yeah,
she's saying if Logain is the dragon, maybe he's actually on our side and
yeah,
we should not gentle him. We should hedge our bet because maybe he's going to help us fight against whoever the dark ones are.
yeah. And they want to
Okay.
keep their cards close to their chest, like they don't want to get rid of something that could be helpful to them.
Okay. That makes better sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to I think episode 2 where Maureen said like the dragon is all of those things and none when they said he could break the world or he could mend it.
Right. Okay.
So
Good. Yeah. I understand that much better now.
yeah,
Okay.
there's a
So
lot
what,
of different threads.
yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, this show just keeps getting a little bit more like the lore of the show keeps getting more complex as it goes, which I guess you would expect, but you still do have to kind of make an effort to keep track of it. So the next scene is between Leandrin and Nynaeve, and Leandrin mispronounces her name and
Yeah,
acts like she doesn't really care about it anyway. And then Nynaeve doesn't trust her, obviously, and that seems to be the point of the whole scene. It's just to kind of highlight that Leandrin and Nynaeve don't get along.
and they wanted to play off of Nynaeve like not being trusting of any Aes Sedai,
Yeah,
and
right,
then there's this person who's directly in conflict with her
right. That's gonna
compared to
be
Moraine. Yeah,
that's gonna be important later.
yeah. So
Yeah. Okay, so then we have uh this whole storyline with Rand, Matt, and Tom. Like this whole storyline feels very, I don't know. I, let me reserve that for a minute. So Rand and Matt and Tom are in the woods. They come across a farm. They decide that they need somewhere to sleep tonight, and so they're going to sneak into the barn at nightfall to sleep in the barn. And
yeah,
while they're talking about that, the farmer who owns the farm comes upon them and threatens them with a bow and arrow, and they have a conversation, and it's revealed that the farmer's wife and son were also kind of hiding with the bows and arrows as well. But in the end, what they just decide on is that they're free, they're welcome to sleep the night in the barn as long as they muck out all the stalls. Basically, if you put in a little bit of work, then you can sleep in the barn, and that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, they're back to working for for a
Yeah,
place to stay.
right. This is definitely a theme with them. Yeah. So the next scene involves Leandrin and Nynaeve. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's basically picks up where that previous scene left off, because Nynaeve was like basically saying, "Tell me about Moraine if you are so welcoming to me," like because she was kind of teasing her about the Aes Sedai. And so Leandrin is saying that Moraine chose the Blue Aja. So there's a third faction that we are told about now. And she says that they are nothing more than spies.
But
And
she says that like dismissively, like,
yeah,
yeah,
like it's like sort of like that their purpose is not very, like, how do you put it? Like,
yeah, it's not very worthwhile. Like,
yeah,
there's other people doing much more important things, and she's just a blue, and they're doing their thing, but everyone knows that the real value of the Aes Sedai are the
yeah,
Reds and the others. Yeah, she's just
yeah.
being dismissive of them just in general.
And so she says that the Red Aja, their duty is to protect the world from the people who misuse the One Power. So that goes back to the gentling and
Yeah.
stopping any males from using One Power. And so then Lan shows up, and Leandrin leaves, and they sort of have a moment there. Lan and Nynaeve have a moment, and he says that they'll get to the tower, and if because she's still worried about the others, Rand, Matt, Egwin, Perrin, and he says when we get there, if the others aren't there, then we'll have resources to find them for you.
Right. He's just reassuring her that
Yeah,
we'll take care of to find them. That they'll probably be at the White Tower, but if they're not, then we will have resources there so we can help track them down or whatever. One thing I did want to mention though is that we keep mentioning that like men can't use the One Power, et cetera, et cetera. And it's explained, just as a reminder to everyone, it's explained that men can't use the One Power because the dragon ruined it for men, right?
mm-hmm.
That
They
he,
basically say it's corrupted.
yeah, that the dragon corrupted the One Power for men, but it's not explained how or why.
Mm-hmm.
Just that it's just a matter of fact.
And they say, I'm not sure if it's in the scene, but they say that men who do use the One Power eventually become like fully corrupted, and they can't control it, and they just become out of control. They have to be stopped. At least that's what
Yeah,
Leandrin thinks.
right. So like kind of out of control and crazy. Like they just kind of
Yeah,
lose their minds basically. They get the overtaken by magic basically, and they can't, or
yeah,
and they can't control themselves, and so let them it's dangerous to kind of let it fester. So if they find men that are tapped into the one source, right, one's power,
yeah.
one
The
power,
true source, the
true
One Power.
source. I always mix them up. If they
That's all
tap
right.
into the one power, then they need to like intervene right away before it
Yeah.
gets to be a problem.
Yep.
Okay, so then the next scene, we go back to the Tinkerers, and they're continuing their travel, and we have another conversation between Perrin and Egwene, and tell us a little bit about that. They talk a little bit about the Way of the Leaf.
Yeah. So Isla, like the leader, basically
Yeah,
is talking about their philosophy still, and they talk about how they swear off all violence, and they call this the way of the leaf. Like they basically flow with the wind as like a leaf. So whenever they are confronted with violence, instead of acting on it, they will just flee or avoid it at all costs. Um, it's sort of implied that they would even give their life and not defend themselves. sort of thing. And
Yeah, and then she asked Perrin, like, once, think back the last time that you had to act violently, what was
yeah,
that like? And it's just it's a cruel kind of scene because it reminds him of him killing his wife.
yeah. So they sort of imply that parents thinking about maybe joining this philosophy, like he's contemplating. They don't say that directly, but you can imply that.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be where we're led to believe,
Yeah,
that the seeds are being planted in Perrin's mind. Well, the way to get away from his guilt is to maybe take up this new philosophy.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's another fairly quick scene. And then we go back to Rand and Matt and Tom doing the work in the barn for the farmer. So tell us a little bit about that. It's kind of a funny scene.
Yeah,
I
so
think so, yeah.
they're working and Tom is sort of standing near the entrance, right? And he basically won't relax, and he's basically keeping watch, and they ask him like, what is he doing? And he says like, a gleeman always has to be ready for a performance, kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Basically, he doesn't want to do the work.
Yeah.
Basically, once again, it's a situation. The last time they were doing work, Rand was doing all the work, and Matt didn't want to do any of the work. And then this time around, Rand is doing a bunch of the work, and Tom doesn't want to do any of the work, and Matt is not exactly very helpful either because he's kind of spinning out.
Well, yeah, well, that's what we kind of are introduced to, is that this darkness is on his palm, right?
Yeah, it's
They
like infected him somehow.
and they showed in the previous scene when the farmer came up to them, he had his hand behind his back, remember?
Yeah, yeah,
And Tom notices it, and so he was sort of hiding it there.
right. So the farmer's daughter, small little kid, like 7 or 8 year old kid, comes out to give them a loaf of bread so they can have something to eat as a gift from the mom and dad. It is very weird, I have to say, that the farmer would send out like such a little girl to give these three grown men, strangers in their barn, like a loaf of bread. Like, does
Did
it
he
seem?
say that, or did she say that it was from him, or did she just bring it herself?
I think she said it was from them to
Oh,
reward
okay.
them from, mom. She says something like mom or dad, I can't remember which, told me to bring this out to you as a reward for your hard
Oh,
work,
okay.
something along those lines. But I'm like thinking back to just a few scenes before where
Yeah.
dad has a bow and arrow drawn on these three guys because he's being protective of his family and his property. And then, like 3 hours later, he's like, hey, telling the 8-year-old girl, why don't you run this bread out to
Yeah.
the weird strangers in the barn? That whatever, but it serves the purpose of the scene, which is that she gives them the bread, and then Matt has a conversation with the little girl, and the little girl gives Matt a little doll for, I guess, protection or
Yeah, they say it's
comfort.
Brigitte,
Yeah.
which is the name of the person the doll is resembling. So
Okay. Okay.
it's someone that we'll probably find out about later from
Okay.
their history.
All right. Good point. Next scene involves Rand and Tom, right? We're still
Hmm.
on the farm.
Yeah,
Now we're back in the barn.
yeah, and Rand's still working, talking to Tom, and Tom mentions his nephew Owen, who was actually able to channel,
Right.
and he talks about how no one really suspected anything, and then one day he was able to basically levitate a rock without using his hands. And Tom mentions how he saw that Matt was acting weird, and he says that Matt has all the signs that he could be a male channeler as well.
Yep.
And Tom talks about Owen, and he says that eventually people discovered, like found out that he could channel, and the Aes Sedai, presumably the Red Aja, hunted him down, and they gentled him and cut him off from the One Power. And he talks a little bit about what happened to Owen after this, because he says you do live after you're gentled, but you're never really the same. And he lived for a while like that, and then eventually he killed himself. His nephew just couldn't be the same after that happened to him. So
Yeah, I really liked this scene because it was a clever way to reveal some information about those that are gentled, like what happens next, like are they fully healed, are they
yeah,
damaged somehow, etc. And this answered all those questions, and I thought it was a really helpful scene.
and we also get more information about what kind of person Tom is. Like he probably doesn't think much of the Aes Sedai after he sees what happened.
Oh, that's true.
You know,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that might come into play later.
yeah, absolutely. All right, so then we have another scene, and this involves Lan and Stefan and the other warders, and they're
So,
all by the fire telling stories.
did you catch the two warders were Alana's warders, and so they said that the Green Aja can have multiple
Yeah,
warders.
basically like a bunch of sex talk here
Yeah,
going on. Yeah,
they kind of joke about the bond,
yeah, the
and
bond. Yeah,
um,
the intimate bond.
yeah. So it's implied that Alana is, she's actually in a physical relationship with her warders
Yeah,
compared to Moraine and Lan.
yeah. I have to say, like, I'm kind of disappointed they went there with
Hmm.
this. Like, it would feel like somehow like a more pure kind of bond if it was not sexual. Like, it be turn to making the relationship sexual kind of introduces like another um motivation for being a warder rather than just serving like the higher purpose.
Hmm. I think it depends
Uh,
on the Aja too.
yeah, I
Like
mean,
Moraine doesn't do that with Lan, so
is that for sure?
I think it's implied that him and Moraine don't in that scene.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just that
Lan
the
gets up
Green.
and he says something like, I feel like I'm getting tired too. And then he gets up and leaves. And I wasn't sure how to read that.
I think that's sort of that they're feeling the bond there. So if Moraine's weakened because she was shielding, then Lan's going to be weak too.
Yeah.
But
Or he just wants an excuse to
yeah,
to
to
leave and go
not.
do something else. I don't know. Anyway, I was like, why did they have to go there? Like it didn't need it, but whatever.
Yeah,
Other people probably have a different read on it, but that was just my take.
it does add more layers to it than there was before. So
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, so Lan, like we said, Lan gets up and walks away from the fire, and then he goes and finds Moraine, and they talk about what if Logain is really the dragon or not. Moraine
mhm,
doesn't think. Moraine thinks that the Dark One doesn't know who the dragon is either, which I'm
right,
not sure exactly why she. It wasn't clear to me why she thinks that exactly, other than like she's just kind of guessing.
yeah, and
Go ahead.
well, with the previous scene with Rand had the stuff with Dana, so she could be wrong here because she said Dana said it's one of those five.
Yeah, I mean that's why I'm thinking like, why is she so certain?
Yeah.
I don't know. And then they talk about how they searched for this for this group of 4 or 5 for like 20 years, and now they're just gone. Like
Yeah.
it just like lost, and they had them and they lost them, and now they're just having to deal with this with Logain. It's like totally throwing them off their pursuit, because they're like, we looked for this group of 4 or 5 uh potential people that could potentially be the dragon. Then we found them, and then all this stuff happened, and now
Mhm.
we got separated, and now Logain is like become a priority, and this really sucks.
Yeah, I wonder if um are we supposed to think that Logain is older than our five characters?
um I don't know. I think he looks older.
Yeah, because remember in the previous maybe episode 1 or 2, they were saying that they knew the exact time that the dragon
Right.
was born. So
And that was like an important part.
maybe Moraine knows that Logain's not the dragon.
But why would she know it and no one else know it?
Yeah. Well, we don't know who knows the time the dragon was born. Maybe Moraine hasn't shared it with anyone.
Well, that's true. It could be secret blue information.
Yeah, like
Like literally, like I said that kind of in a joking way, but
yeah,
it could be
and she wouldn't want the red to know because of obviously they would.
because they're out there gentling anything that moves.
Yeah, so
All right.
maybe now that I think about it more, maybe she's talking in the scene about the five. She doesn't know which of the five is the dragon, and the same with the dark one.
That could be. I mean, that makes more. I don't know. It still doesn't make any sense. Like, how does she? She doesn't know what the dark one thinks. Like, the dark one could know exactly what's going on, and
Yeah,
she's just kind of guessing. I think she's just kind of saying, like, we don't know. If we don't know, then how could the dark one know? Because
yeah,
for because for reasons of making themselves sound, if we're really good, and if we don't know,
yeah.
then certainly nobody else knows, including the dark one.
Hmm.
So
So
I
that
don't
was
know.
interesting.
Anyway, we're back with the Tinkerers. Next scene, we're back with the Tinkerers, Egwin and Perrin, and Egwin is dancing
Uh huh.
with Aram,
Yeah.
and then they talk about this was an interesting story. They talk about how the Tinkerers used to know a song, and the mythology is that this song brings harmony to the world,
Uh huh.
but then during the breaking of the world, the song was lost. And
Yeah.
because the song was lost, then that's the reason why there's all this um, disharmony going on right now.
Yeah. So it's more about their philosophy.
Yeah.
Um,
They're spending a lot of time talking about their philosophy. And so, you know, trying to read into that, it's going to have to pay off somehow. Like, I
yeah.
think for sure, we'll talk more about predictions and stuff later, but it certainly seems like they would not be spending this much time detailing the philosophy of the Tinkerers if it wasn't going to come up later in an important way.
Yeah. Certainly. Um, it would be nice if that all came together at one point. And I mean, they're introducing so many things, though. Like you have the dragon stuff, you have the stuff with the Aiel. I can't even remember what else, but like every episode is introducing more stuff.
Yeah, and
So
the white robes or the white cloaks or whatever
yeah, and the
still.
white cloaks.
Yeah, we
Like
haven't gone back to them. I really wish. I
yeah, I
was
was
really
gonna
hoping
say
that we would go back to them because they seem really interesting to me. But
yeah, and that was one thing that you were. Well, it was actually part of your predictions was that this episode would do that.
yeah, well, so much for that. Okay, so then we have okay, so they're talking about the song. Aram says he doesn't believe
Yeah.
this myth or whatever. And then tell us what happens next.
So we go to Isla, right, and she's speaking to Perrin now, and Perrin sees one of the Tinkerers is sort of like mangled, like she's got a scar in her eye. Um, and Perrin says, like, I thought you guys were against violence, but this person looks pretty rough. And she says, well, this person was a hired killer, and she eventually saw the error of her ways, right?
Right.
Um, and
This does this
so,
sound familiar?
yeah,
Does this sound like anybody else, Perrin?
yeah. And so Isla's talking about their goal, and so this disharmony, they think that everything will be in harmony when they end all violence in the world.
Right. And how are they going to do that?
Yeah, so Isla says, well, that's what Perrin says is how on earth would
Yeah.
you ever do that? And Isla says, well, if I convert one or two people, then that's a success for me. And so she's sort of
Right. It's like
leading.
I think what she's describing is some kind of snowball effect where I convert two people and those two people each convert two people. And then, you know what I mean? And so it's like
Yeah.
basically becomes like a big pyramid scheme of conversion and big snowball network effect. And
And she's
then
planting the
everything's
seeds for
sorted out.
Perrin,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, and then Isla says, like, she talks about how she was converted. So she had a daughter that was Aaron's mother, and what was she walking alone in the woods like the girl from the farmer?
Something, yeah.
and she was killed by bandits.
Yeah, this is a weird story.
Yeah. But basically, she said like she had no money on her. My daughter was just walking in the woods, and she was killed for sport by these
Right.
bandits.
And so she's like, instead of seeking revenge through violence, then I decided to get revenge through trying to promote peace and harmony.
Yeah, because she says I want revenge, but parents says, well, that's not very peaceful. But she says there are other ways to get revenge.
Yeah. So we'll find out.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the scene shifts slightly, and then we're back with Arm and Egwin.
Mm-hmm. And he senses that she is still upset about Rand. Kind of worried about what's going on with him.
Yeah.
And so, but Arm's still talking about their lifestyle. And he said,
so anyway,
he says, yeah, when they turn 20, they're allowed to leave their community. And
this is basically like an Amish tradition that he's describing. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of cool because a lot of the author of the books, Robert Jordan, he did a lot of research into real world religions and mythologies. And so a lot of this stuff is based off things that you would see in the real world. So for this, they go when they're 20 and they can do a trade, or like he said, travel on boats, be a blacksmith, take up arms, and they get to decide, like, do I want to continue with the tinker lifestyle or do I want to leave it? And he says most come back.
Right. Most, but not all.
Yeah, he says, but if they don't come back, they don't hold it against them. He just says that's the way the wind takes them.
Yeah.
So more world building.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so then we go back to the barn. Scene switch. We go back to the barn with Rand and Matt. Rand starts having another nightmare. And
so your favorite part.
Yeah, well, these aren't as bad as some. At least these are short. Like this one was like probably less than 30 seconds. So Rand starts having another nightmare, and he sees Perrin with his hammer, like hammering on. Is that supposed to be an Aes Sedai?
I think so. It showed the ring.
Okay,
but so I mean, they didn't really show the face.
Good enough. Perrin's hammering on an Aes Sedai, like, yeah, which was weird. He's doing it kind of slowly. Which I guess it's like, okay, it's a dream, whatever. Matt with 1T is walking kind of zombie-ish with blood on his hands.
He's got that stuff on his hands.
Yeah. Yeah, with the like that pattern of that dark pattern or whatever you want to call it. And Egwin is getting taken by a figure, but it's that figure he keeps seeing with like the glowing red eyes and mouth. Yeah. Then he wakes up in a panic, and
Matt's gone.
Matt's gone. And so Tom and Rand get up and they go into the farmer's home. Not exactly sure why, it's not explained, but so anyway, they're there, and then they see that the farmer's family has been murdered.
Yeah, and they make you think Matt did it at first.
Yeah, well, I'm not 100% convinced he didn't do it. So Matt is standing over the bodies with a knife, with the cursed knife he got in the city that I can't remember the name of.
Yeah, Shodar Logoth.
Yeah, and there's kind of a pause where they're looking at Matt like, oh, you killed these people. And then Matt says something like, oh, I see you, and points with the knife up into the rafters, and up there is is a fade, and then they battle the fade.
And Tom's got his daggers again.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that Tom is really good with the daggers for a bard. Is that suspicious at all to you?
Yeah, I think there's definitely more to him than just being a gleeman.
Yeah,
he's sort of like Aragorn, if you know Lord of the Rings. Like, he's not really a ranger in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, he's a gleeman, I guess, with a past, gleeman with a dark past. Yeah. So anyway, they fight with the fade. Tom more than the rest, and then as they fleeing, they see the girl, like the little girl's dead body, and then Matt drops the doll that she gave him.
Yeah. And Tom actually stays behind and sacrifices himself so they can get away. Right.
I'm not sure I put that together.
Yeah, I
Is that what
think
happened?
they close the door and he's holding the door
Oh,
and they run off on the horses. So I mean, we don't know what happened.
okay. Yeah, I guess I was just assuming that he would
Yeah, he's like,
follow
go.
or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think like, oh, he's there for the fight to the death or anything. I just figured he was
Yeah.
going to hold them off and then join them, but we don't really
Hmm.
know. I guess we'll have to wait to the next
Yeah, we'll have to see.
episode or whatever. Yeah, because that's the last time we see them, right?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so too.
So yeah, but you're right. They don't really say directly who killed the family. I just assumed it was the Fade.
Yeah, but I don't know. But you don't know.
Yeah.
And was like something that I had wondered was, what did Matt call the Fade?
Yeah, maybe.
Because if he's touched with the whatever the touched with the sickness that all men get when they use the one source, then yeah.
And
Okay.
remember the dagger also. They said not to take things
Yeah.
from the city.
Yeah, it's basically, it's like a cursed dagger. That's what
Yeah,
I call it, the cursed dagger. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if Rand has made that connection yet. Maybe that'll be next episode. He'll tell him that he took the dagger from there.
Yeah, like there's no reason to think that he knows.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Tom wouldn't know.
Okay. So what's the next scene?
Yeah, so there's like a really quick scene where Nynaeve sees that Lan is kind of walking away, but it goes back to that later.
Yeah.
But then we go back to Karini, and she's talking to Leandrin, and they're standing by Logain again. And Leandrin really wants to gentle.
Right.
him.
She's really still kind of advocating for the whole gentling thing.
And she says that if they allow him to break out of the cage, they can gentle him and it wouldn't break their oaths because they're defending each other from him.
She wants to set him up.
Yeah,
right?
and like they presumably wouldn't say that they allowed him to break out.
Yeah.
And Karini's like, no, he needs this trial. We need to obey our orders.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that. So it's basically just a scene where it's re-establishing that Leandrin really wants to gentle this guy, and everybody else is like, no, we have to do it by the book.
And it shows that they're willing to break or bend the rules.
Good point. That Leandrin is not above setting things up to get her way, even if it's totally not in keeping with the spirit of of their bylaws or whatever. Okay, so then we go back to Lan, and Lan is doing some kind of ritual for this. What he says, Lan describes it later. He's doing a ritual for the Seven Towers, and Nynaeve walks up to him, and Nynaeve talks about how she lost her parents.
Yeah, and they taught her a prayer the last time she saw them, so she's sort of relating to him.
Yeah, and the prayer that she was taught is in what they call it the Old Tongue.
Yeah,
and she doesn't know what it means, but Lan actually knows the Old Tongue and tells her what it means. And I don't exactly remember what it is, but
something about protection, like a general prayer.
Yeah. Okay, then we get to the real action of the episode. Next scene, Logain's army has caught up.
Yeah, so they didn't all leave like they said in the beginning. They said that one left after he was caught.
Yeah.
And
so Logain's army did not go back. Who says that? Does Leandrin say that when we caught him? We caught him in his sleep. We snuck up onto Logain in his sleep and took him. And then she said something about we fired lightning into the sky, and then the rest of the army just ran home. But now we know that that's a lie. Logain's army didn't just scatter. They've followed them, and now they're here. So Logain's army enters into the camp, and Logain is able to break the shield.
Yeah, because all the Aes Sedai are distracted.
Right.
like there's a moment where they sense the warders are fighting, and they sort of, well, I guess it doesn't really say if Leandrin does it on purpose or not, but he's able to break out.
Yeah, I suppose it's conceivable that she let it happen or whatever, but it's not said one way or the other. I didn't assume that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's possible.
Yeah.
But so we sort of have a moment where Moraine is confronting Logain.
Right. So there's a big battle going on outside, out of the cave or whatever they have
Yeah.
Logain in, and they're fighting. All the warders and some of the Aes Sedai are battling with Logain's army, and then in all this kind of general confusion, Logain's able to break the cage out of the cage, and then he's basically alone. Like the other ones have been knocked unconscious, I think.
Yeah.
Or is that right? Yeah. So something like that. And so Moraine comes in and says to Logain, like, I'm glad that I can have you, I'm glad we can talk privately now because I want to talk to you.
She's being
And
sneaky.
yeah, and she says, why do you think you're the dragon? And then Logain says, I know I'm the dragon because when I close my eyes, all the past dragons talk to me, or when I channel, all the past dragons talk to me. And Moraine doesn't buy that. She basically thinks that the voices he's hearing are like the madness, and it's nothing more than that. And then she says, which I think is like kind of a curious thing to say or to believe anyway. She says, well, I know you're definitely not the dragon because you're not powerful enough.
Yeah, because the
Which,
dragon would be so much more powerful
yeah,
than just what he can do.
yeah, but he seems pretty powerful too. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems I don't know where she's, again, like Moraine seems to say a lot of things without offering any kind of like
Yeah,
reason
it seems
why
to be
she
a
did
running
things.
running
Yeah.
pattern here.
Yeah, like she'll just say it like that's not it. It's it's not A, it's B, but she doesn't give any evidence for why she believes
Yeah, she
what
doesn't
she's
care.
saying. Yeah. So I mean, maybe that's important, maybe it's not, but it's maybe worth pointing out anyway. So she says, you're not the Dragon Reborn because if you were, you'd be so much more powerful. And Carini and Moraine and Leandrin begin to fight with Logain. Some of the warders run in, and who is it that attacks Logain? One of the warders. Is it Stefan?
Well, what happens first is they're trying to shield him. The three, Aes Sedai, Carini, Moraine, Leandrin, and somehow Logain is able to fight back, and he kills Carini.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And Stefan is her warder, and he feels it in the forest that something's happened to her, and so he runs in and jumps and does the slow-mo axe
Yeah. Double
chop.
axe battle pose. Yeah.
Which obviously doesn't do anything.
Right. Logain's able to block it, and then he channels his like dark energy into him, and it explodes his axes, and those axes fly, like the shards of the axe fly out, and they basically kill everyone in the room.
Yeah.
Or close to, anyway.
Injure. I mean, Moraine's got like a big hole in her.
Right. Yeah. Not kill, but it's definitely like, harm, like injure them enough to where they can't really defend themselves. And Lan is like, his neck is slit, and so he's definitely meant to be maybe mortally, not dead, but die. Yeah, like mortally wounded. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then take us through what happens next.
Yeah. So Lan is sort of like choking out on his own blood, right? And Nynaeve had ran in behind the warders because she was helping out outside, and she sees that Lan is injured, and she sort of has her channeling moment where she puts her hands on top of his neck, and there's a giant aura that comes through the room, and she heals his wound. Right.
Yeah. Well, not only his wound.
Yeah, right.
Everybody in the whole room is healed.
Yeah. And I think they kind of show Moraine's reaction, and she's kind of like impressed.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, yeah, because when she heals, it's like a big burst of
yeah,
energy. It's not like we've seen. It's not like how we've seen the magic
yeah,
shown in any of the other episodes, where it's like that kind of dark pattern or these kind of wispy threads of magic or whatever. This is like a big,
mhm,
bright explosion of energy or of power or whatever, however you'd like to call it, and that like heals everybody in the room. So it's unique.
yeah. And so after that happens, and Loghain's sort of like still there, fighting back, and Leandrin's sort of like, all right, we have to deal with this.
Yeah,
And all the Reds, and does Moraine help? I don't
I
think
think
so.
they all do.
Okay, so and then they gentle him. So
Yeah, they all like funnel their power through uh
yeah, it's like a giant weave there's like 3 or 4 things that go into his chest, and it pulls the power out of him, and he
yeah, through Leandrin. They like
yeah,
all latch, or like they focus their power through Leandrin, and then she
yeah.
is able to uh what, basically to kill him. Do we think he's dead?
No, I think they just gentle him, and
Okay.
he's going to be like how Tom described now.
Yeah, that's right. That we see all of like the dark
Yeah,
energy like kind of leave his body, and then that's what we don't know anything more. So
yeah, that's how
you're
the
probably
episode.
right. Like you're probably assume we should probably assume he's not dead, that he's just powerless. But
Yeah,
yeah, but in the
'cause-
long term, he's probably not going to make it.
yeah, I
Given,
think
yeah,
because one of the rules is they can't kill, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so they don't actually kill him,
yeah. Good point. Good point.
but that's how it ends. That's
Yeah. And that's the big end. Like, the big end is all the dark energy leaving Logain, and then all of the like shock that Nynaeve was able to do what she did.
yep.
Okay, so general impressions of the episode. Did you like
Yes,
it?
I definitely think this was the best episode of the 4 so far, because not only did it have a big action at the end, right, like episode 1 did, but it also had a lot of these character moments, like with Owen, with Tom talking about Owen. We have the stuff with the Tinkerers, and more lore with the Ajas, and the dragon. So I didn't think it felt fast paced at all. Like the first 1 or 2 episodes felt more fast paced. So I think they're starting to find their groove and get
Yeah,
into the swing of things now.
I think it's certainly good. I think it's on par with. It's either better or on par with episode 3, which I thought was the best of the bunch.
Huh. Yeah, I couldn't
Um,
decide. Remember
yeah.
the previous ones, but this one definitely I think was the strongest.
My only slight nitpick with the
Uh huh.
episode is that the episode kind of takes Rand and Matt and Tom kind of not out of the story, but what is happening to them is so removed from
Hmm.
the rest of the story. It feels it feels like they're getting neglected a little bit. Like a lot of the action was all the Aes Sedai. Like the main focus of this episode were all on the Aes Sedai characters,
And you
which
could
is
say the same for Perrin and Egwene.
right. Yeah, I was getting to that. So the focus on the Aes Sedai characters, and I felt like there was a lot of character development being done with Perrin
Uh huh.
and the Tinkerer, like a lot of explaining about the Tinkerer's philosophy,
That's true.
and a lot of like character development being done for Perrin. Whether I think we both kind of think that he's going to adopt this philosophy. But with Tom and Rand and Matt, it was just kind of like they went to a farm, they slept in a barn, and then Matt may or may not have killed some people, and one of the
Yeah, there's the only character moments were for Tom.
yeah, and
Well,
they're
like sort of for Matt being crazed or whatever you want to
yeah.
say. But
So it does seem like their story is kind of lagging
yeah,
behind everyone else's in terms of like like momentum. But which is kind of a bummer because I think those are good characters. And I
Yeah.
think that the show really, the first couple episodes at least, really, I thought gave the impression to the audience that Rand was going to be like a major character. Like
Mhm.
I thought, like after watching the first two episodes, it's like, okay, Rand is our main character, um, which
Yeah.
is fine if he's not. Like I don't care one way or the other, really. Like it's not important. He's not even the most. He's not the most interesting character.
He
But I
hasn't
thought
had a lot of work done to his character like the others have. So
right. So like in terms of the momentum for those characters, I feel like they're kind of lagging behind, but who
yeah,
knows? Like the next episode could be like all them.
I hope it
And
is like maybe it's the reverse, and we get a lot of Rand next episode, and maybe only 2 or 3 scenes with the Aes Sedai or something.
yeah, could be. I mean, I hope so. I mean, all
Yeah,
the Aes Sedai stuff is really interesting. I kind of hate to say, oh, can we see less of the Aes Sedai? Because all the Aes Sedai stuff
yeah,
is really intriguing and propulsive for the plot. But at the same time, I would also like to see some more development done with the Tinkerers
yeah,
storyline, but more importantly with Rand and Tom and Matt to see
yeah.
where that goes exactly. But in general, like general impressions is just really good. Like I really do feel like they know what they're doing now. Like the first episode felt a little bit shaky. You know, we've talked about this before, but first episode felt a little shaky because they were trying to do a lot of
Uh huh.
stuff and it didn't all gel together as well as maybe it could have. But
It
starting
definitely
like
felt sped up.
yeah, episode 2 was better than 1, and 3 and 4 have been very, very good. Did you want to talk about predictions?
Yeah. Oh, but I was just gonna say that. So Sanderson was talking on Reddit, and he had his AMA.
Okay.
And one of the things he said was that his favorite episodes plot wise were episodes 5 and especially episode 6.
Oh, so the
So
best is yet to come.
yeah. So I'm excited to see what exactly is going to happen.
Well, that would be welcome.
Yeah. But yeah, we can do predictions. So since
Do you have anything you want to predict?
yeah, just the only thing I would say is that I hope, like we said, that we focus more on these other characters for an episode or two, and
Yeah.
um, eventually get them to build their
Yeah.
arcs.
Yep. The only predictions I would make maybe for the next episodes, we'll see more of those, hopefully see more of those characters.
Yeah,
We'll see more of I mean, they opened up a whole new plot line with Nynaeve being the fifth, like she is, I
yeah,
assume now she's supposed to be the fifth one that has been mentioned multiple times by different people.
yeah.
And
So
so maybe that will go, there'll be more, when we're spending time with the Aes Sedai plot line, I assume it's going to be um less focused on why is his name lost my
for Lan and Moraine.
Logain. It'll be
Oh,
less
like
focused on Logain and more focused on
yeah,
Nynaeve and that whole thing. And then other predictions are no, I think that's it. I think I'm good
you
with that. I think they're going to continue. Maybe next episode it would be interesting to me if so okay so if the show is going to take Perrin and make him adopt this philosophy like the philosophy
uh-huh.
of the leaf or the leaf philosophy or the whatever the tinkerers call their philosophy. I do hope they do it sooner rather than later because I'd like to see it explored in this season. Like I
Hmm.
would hate for it to be like there's 8 episodes of the season and I'd hate to get to episode 8 and then have Perrin decide that he's adapting this lifestyle and then we don't get to really see how he's going to put that into practice.
Yeah,
So if the show is going to have Perrin go all in on this philosophy, I would rather them do it now so we can see how he like takes it on board and starts to live it without having to wait until season 2 for something like that.
yeah. So do you have any predictions for the dragon, or do you just want to wait
As
more?
far as who I think the dragon is,
Yeah, of the 5.
man, I don't know. I hope that I don't know. Like I hope that they haven't made it obvious. Like I really want that to be a big reveal rather
Uh
than
huh.
like something that they hint around at.
Hmm.
Like I hope they don't build the case for the dragon like a little bit at a time, trickle it out. I
Hmm.
hope that like at the end like at the end, maybe the end of the season or whatever, you have like a reveal that's kind of surprising. Like I want to be surprised in one capacity or another.
Yeah.
So it's not as fun if you're like kind of if they kind of lead you down the road and you're like, okay, well, it's obviously,
So
Nynaeve because she has this, powerful
yeah.
burst of power or whatever, or it's obviously, this person or that person. So I hope there's like a nice big reveal toward the end where we're like, oh, where you think you're shocked. You're like, I didn't see that coming.
So you
That
don't
could
want to
be
make a
cool.
prediction that way you don't ruin it
Yeah,
for.
well, I don't know. Like, I mean, you could. I just don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, like, if I had to guess right now, you'd just say, well, Nynaeve is probably the dragon, but I think they're trying to make you think that. Like, I think that's the one of the goals of this episode was to like make the audience think that
And they
by
did that with
putting.
Logain. Like they introduced him as the dragon.
Yeah, and that was like the end of the third, the end of. So yeah, so think about the end of the third episode. We're introduced to Logain, who's supposed to be the dragon. And then at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the fourth episode, Nynaeve has her big reveal, and we're supposed to think that she's a dragon. So, like, I can tell that this is probably going to be a pattern for at least a little bit
Yeah.
until we get like towards episode 8 or whatever.
And Tom
Um,
says that Matt's showing signs of channeling, so
yeah,
he's a potential. And
right. And but they've really gone out of their way in this episode to, I think, throw cold water on the idea that the dragon could be a man, because they keep talking about how separate it is, like that
yeah,
you can't see men when they chant, like the women can't see the men channeling and all that stuff. But again, they could just be trying to set expectations so that we think that it's not a man, and then they could go against those expectations by having the true dragon be a man.
yeah.
Who knows? Maybe there'll be more than one true dragon. Maybe the true dragon is a myth and it's like actually two people that when they are together, they form they're like the Voltron of dragons and they
Maybe
form the big dragon or whatever. I don't know. Could be.
it's a good theory. We'll
All
see.
right. Let's probably should end it there. We've gone pretty long.
Yeah. Okay.
That was episode 4 of Pattern of the Ages. You can send us feedback at patternoftheages@gmail.com. That's patternoftheages@gmail.com. And until next time, thanks for listening.
See ya.